The standings after 10 events. Tennessee's Pesek has the lead. Chikina is second. Wilkinson third. Flint, Powers, Link, Culpepper, and Zebarth.
And you can see that Kathy Pesek has a pretty good lead after 10 rounds of dives. There are 12 rounds total. So they have completed already 10 rounds, although only 4 dives are in the final. So they did 8 dives in the preliminaries, and they are doing 4 in the finals, and we are going to start with second to last round of dives, dive number 11.
So here is Lizzie Flint. She's a freshman from Auburn University, the Spring National Platform Champion. She'll be doing a reverse 2.5 tuck, degree of difficulty 2.7.
And Lizzie Flint won the Nationals just about a year ago as a high school senior, a great accomplishment at her home pool in Auburn. A nice jump off the platform, a reverse 2.5 somersault, where you must look at the water in order to spot where to kick out of the dive. And she does a real good job with that. I think it would have been all 8s if she had cleaned up the entry just a little bit more. Look at this beautiful kick out, but the dive splashes just barely past vertical. She scores very well on this. 7s and 7.5s, but I think the 8s would have been there if she had gone in without a splash, and she does accomplish that 60-point total, which is a great total.
So a good dive for Auburn's Lizzie Flint. And now here is the NCAA defending champion on platform, Laura Wilkinson of Texas. She's a sophomore.
And she was just 1 point ahead of Lizzie Flint coming into this round. And she's doing a dive that is 2/10 degree of difficulty higher, a back 2.5 somersault in the pike position. So she doesn't need to score quite as high as Lizzie in order to stay ahead of her. But she's going to score very similarly. The dive off the platform, the jump was terrific. She's really strong in the air, keeps her legs nice and tight, but she goes in the water with just a little bit of arch in her back, sliding just slightly past vertical. And again, it's a terrific dive. The back 2.5 by Laura Wilkinson, just barely arching as she goes in the water, and that's the reason why she doesn't receive the 8s also. But again, anytime you see 60-point total, that means the diver is probably going to move up.
Mostly 7s and 7.5s, nearly 61 points for the defending champ, Laura Wilkinson. So now here's Natasha Chikina from the University of Southern Cal, originally from Kazakhstan. She'll be doing an arm stand 2.5 somersault pike, degree of difficulty just 2.4.
It's a very low degree of difficulty dive, and this could very much hurt her in this round because, again, she was only 4 points ahead of Laura Wilkinson going into this, and she's got to score considerably higher. Now that is a great entry into the water, and it's a big sound because her palms are flat as she hits the water. She flattens her palms in order to make a hole for the diver to go through. To get your body through the hole, you make this hole with your hands. You know, it's just so much force on the wrist. You see those tapes on her wrist, those supports. It doesn't mean that her wrist is injured. It means that she is supporting her wrist.
And here's our leader, Kathy Pesek from Tennessee. She's a 21-year-old junior originally from Houston, Texas. She'll be doing a reverse 2.5 tuck, degree of difficulty 2.7.
And she has splints on her forearms. She has the equivalent of a shin splint in both forearms. Oh, she has a little trouble with that dive because she jumps out too far in the middle of the pool. A reverse 2.5 somersault must be done somewhere between 1.5 to 3 feet by the platform as you pass it, as she passes it. And she's going further out than that. Of course, the trajectory continues to take you out, but she's still going to be in the lead because she had a nice lead coming into this, even though she does not score 60 points on this dive. And you see her feet just barely apart as she enters the water. That's not one of her best dives.
6.5s and 7s, a total of 55-35 for Kathy Pesek of Tennessee. We're going to come back to the Aquatic Center. We'll have more diving. The final round is coming up, so stay with us. We're back. Kathy Pesek in the lead, Laura Wilkinson, Natasha Chikina, and Lizzie Flint all in the hunt for second place. This is the 12th and final round of diving. Here is Lizzie Flint, the Auburn freshman.
Lizzie Flint has a chance to get second place here because she's less than 2 points out of second. Now she needs a good dive. It's an inward 2.5 somersault pike. She needs to go in the water straight and clean and be proper distance from the platform. The distance was good. The entry was vertical. She moved her head slightly as she went through the water and created just a little bit too much splash to receive all 8s. I think the takeoff is spectacular. The come out is good. It's vertical going in the water. But look at the splash come up. You see a lot of bubbles and then you see the splash. And that's a function of moving too soon with your arms or your head as you go through the water, underwater.
7.5, mostly for Lizzie Flint of Auburn.
Congratulations.
Total of 63 points. That brings us to the defending champion, Laura Wilkinson of Texas. She's currently in second place. She needs a big dive here.
Well, it's almost impossible for Laura Wilkinson to defend her title here because she is 28.5 points behind Kathy Pesek, and Kathy Pesek would have to miss miserably in order for Laura Wilkinson to make up these points. It's a back 1.5 somersault with 2.5 twist. Oh, it's a pretty dive. It's very smooth. It's technically well performed. It's somersaulting and twisting at the same time. Keeping her feet together is difficult, but she does that well. Look at the feet in the twist. They cross just slightly, but she keeps them tight together, and she goes in the water without a whole lot of splash. Again, that's important. And I like the way she squares out. She doesn't have any twist as she goes in. That's so important on these twisting dives where you have a lot of torque.
She gets 63 points on 7.5s and 8s. That brings us to Natasha Chikina from USC.
Again, here's a diver that has the opportunity, although she's in third place right now, to move into second place. She has to score above 8s on this dive to overtake Laura Wilkinson. We just saw Laura Wilkinson get mostly 8s. And they have the same dive, a back 1.5 with 2.5 twists. Well, I knew it wasn't going to be the dive that she wanted right from the platform because she jumped back too far. She immediately leaned too far off the platform, and that makes it difficult to control the entry. What happens on the top of the dive as you take off certainly affects what happens on the bottom. You get a reaction from that. So she is not going to overtake Laura Wilkinson with that dive.
A 6, a couple of 6.5s, a couple of 7s, 54-60 total. And now we get to our leader, Kathy Pesek of Tennessee. Trying to end with a flourish. She'll do a back 2.5 somersault pike, difficulty at 2.9.
What I think is extremely interesting is that Kathy Pesek has taken those splints off of her forearms. She says on this dive, she has trouble grabbing in the appropriate place behind her legs if she has those splints on. Now she has wrist supports, but no more splints. She would have to miss the dive for less than 5s. She's not. That's a good dive. It's a little bit piked going in the water, bent at the waist, slightly past vertical, but there's your champion. She set a record at the Southeastern Conference meet, and she's diving very consistently throughout the meet, really did not miss a dive.
The scores are up, and you're looking at the champion, Kathy Pesek, her final dive, and it's good enough.
Absolutely. If she cleans up that entry, she'll receive 8s across the board. That's the only thing she did wrong on that dive.
So Kathy Pesek, a total of 60-90. Her sister Linda, an All-American at Houston. She comes from a great diving family, and she's got to be stoked. She is an NCAA champion.